Hi guys, this is a rare occasion for me. I have not done this sort of activity before. But Wilma asked me to put together a short video on the occasion of Graham's 70th birthday. Well done, lad. Um, the the first recollection that I have is sitting in a Cortina. It might have been in our first event. I can't remember the actual event, but in a Cortina where we went around this rather sharp corner that came upon us rather suddenly, and the car went decidedly sideways, and I think we somehow lost vision of the road that we were supposed to be on. But the sideways movement became quite significant, and it not only occurred on the left, but on the right and on the left again. And I think we're about 100 degrees off the direction of travel. But we survived, and that was simply due to Trounce's magnificent correction and ability and luck. I think a lot of luck, actually. But that was fine, and I'm not sure if that was in the first George Derrick. It may well have been, but if it wasn't, that first George Derrick was quite memorable, and we thought we were pretty good. And unfortunately, there was another car with Ross Runnels and what the hell was his navigator? I should know that, but anyway, I'll come back to that probably. But we did all right. We got second by a long way in our class, grade three. Probably another memorable occasion, and I'm not going to keep to 1 minute by any way at all, Wilma. And the next occasion was the 1977 Alpine, and I think from memory, Graham had some work done on the motor, and for the first time we wore helmets with intercom. And those two things combined meant that we really didn't have much idea of how fast we're going. And it seemed like we were going actually quite fast. And after a couple of stages, I seem to remember being told that we were about fifth or sixth fastest on the first two stages. Now, that's no mean feat when it comes to the likes of Carr and Bond and Fury and a few other reasonable drivers with reasonable cars and reasonable teams, RS2000s and all sorts of things like that. So anyway, this story actually takes about half an hour if Graham tells it, but I'll try and do it in a minute or two. The corner that is in question was a fast left-hander, but a lot of gravel under it, under our wheels, unfortunately. And the long and the short of it was we went off the road rather quickly, and we, again, surprisingly, couldn't see where we were because the lights were pointing somewhere up towards Mars. And the occasion was when we finally got our sort of thoughts together, the car was still rocking, and we didn't know why. But when I opened the door and looked down, I couldn't see the ground. So that sort of gave me an indication that we're in a bit of trouble. But the long and the short of it was that I'm not sure who got out first. Don't know. But we had to actually work out how to get the car back on the ground. It was held up by a star picket at the front and a boulder underneath. And I read an article just recently where I was supposed to have burnt my elbow when I reached up to grab the car to pull it down onto the ground again. But I think it was an exaggeration. I got a little burn on my inside of my forearm. But some other cars, I seem to remember 3 or 4 or 5 actually in the same area, and a lot of winching and carrying on to get us back on the road. But that was a memorable occasion. We managed to didn't get a scratch, and I don't think the car was badly uh, dented at all. I think it was just a matter of being held up in the air. Anyway, we survived that. But the next event that I remember was going quite quickly in a George Derrick. I think it was 1978. And we were going actually quite quickly. Daylight time, I think. Sandy, north of Wentworth, Mildura, that area. And not a lot of activity, not a lot of people about out there. And we were going quite quickly, as I said. And I noticed this sort of flash in front of me, and I didn't know what it was at the time. And I said, Graham, we've got a problem. Keep your eye on the instruments. Yeah, okay, Graham, I will. Unfortunately, I didn't see anything happening on the instruments, but not long after we came to a fairly quick halt. We stopped. And the cause of this little problem was a metal fan exiting through the bonnet. Made it quite a neat, longish sort of slash in the bonnet, but it exited. And when that happens, there's a certain amount of, shall we say, lack of equal weighting on the fan, and it caused a horrific vibration, I believe, and all the water fell out of the engine. Boom, boom. And that didn't help at all. So there we were, seized motor, and I can't remember how we actually got out of there, except we were towed on a rope that was about 2 inches long, I think, and it was pretty scary. I don't think Graham minded, but I sat there with my mouth open and my eyes closed most of the way, and we got back to Mildura and found a garage to stick it in, and I think to be recovered in due course. But I'm up to 7 minutes, so I'm sorry, Wilma, but I've got one more little story to tell, and that's how we got out of Mildura. Somehow or other, we found that Tom Francis had a plane. He did, and just happened to be in Mildura, and he just happened to be following, I think, Peter Hurry in a little Celica, Toyota Celica. So Tom was there with his plane, and the suggestion was that Graham and I hop in this said plane and have a little fly around in the Riverina. And so we did, and we then went out to the Mildura airport and found Tom's little plane, and we all hopped in. I think there was Graham and I, of course, and Tom, and a young chap who was a mechanic. So 4 of us in this little plane, and we hopped in, and unfortunately the plane didn't start when Tom pressed the button. So, oh dear, what do we do now? So we all piled out, and Tom said, "Don't you worry, lads, I'll fix it." So with that, he went around to the front of the plane and gave it what's called a flick start. Now, flick start is somewhat dangerous, I am told, and I now believe it because I saw it with my own eyes. What happened next was interesting because the engine started, which was good. The problem was that the plane also started to move. That's bad. That's very bad. So the plane started to move, and we then realised that there was no one in the plane. So what happens next was that the plane was heading for a hangar, one of those open sheds. They're not too flash up in Mildura, but an open shed. But in the open shed there were quite a few little planes, and my forward vision, my examination of what could happen suggested this plane could actually head for those little planes sitting there all alone innocently, and they might get blown up, damaged, whatever. But what do we do to save the situation? Well, Graham and I remember were on the left-hand wing, I think, and we thought we'd be heroes, and we actually tried to stop the plane. That doesn't work, really. But somehow or other, Tom Francis tried to dive for the steps. He got to the step with his hands, but unfortunately, the plane was going fairly quickly at this time, and he was dragged along, his sort of feet dangling out at almost horizontal, and he didn't have his good trousers and shoes on, but they were severely scruffed. They were scruffed up a lot, but he didn't make it up to the cockpit, unfortunately. So by this time, the plane was going around and around in a sort of a wide circle, which was good because it was missing the planes in the hangar, or the little open shed. We'll call it a hangar because it sounds a lot better. Anyway, the long and the short of it was the plane started to do circles around this central pole, I think, where they hang the sock to see which way the wind was going. Well, it didn't much matter at that point. But I won't keep you too long. I'll just say this: there was an out for this. There was a solution, and the solution was that the young chappie I talked about was up on the wing with a screwdriver. I don't know what he was doing there. I think he was trying to check the battery earlier. But anyway, he managed to open a window in the cockpit, from the outside, of course, and he put his head in first and somehow got himself vertical and got into the seat where people fly planes from. Tom, if you're listening, I'm sure you're not, but the message might go through. Tom, you're supposed to have someone in the plane when it takes off. That's always a good idea. So this young chappie, I don't even know his name, I can't remember even talking to him, he got into the seat and he didn't know how to fly planes, which was quite apparent because he pushed the stick, I think that's what it's called, the stick in the wrong direction, and the plane sort of lurched forward a bit. But then he realised that was wrong and he went the other way and managed to stop the plane. So that was an eventful event, if you like, in Mildura. Only one little bit to that was that Tom said, how about we have a little rest here on the grass, or on the gravel actually, and we'll have a little lie down because you're all a bit agitated, and we'll then think about doing it again, taking off again. Tom, we're not doing that. We're going to go into Mildura. We're going to have a nice night. We'll stay in a motel and we'll have a nice meal at the club, and we'll consider our options tomorrow. All agreed to that. Tom probably wasn't that happy about it, but we thought we'd had enough for the day, and off we went. Probably had a couple of beers and a good lie down. So that's all the stories I've got. I've gone over my time by quite a lot, actually, about, oh golly, like 12 minutes or so. But all I can say now is happy birthday, old boy. We had a lot of fun. We won a few events. We won a few clubman events, I think. We won a Western District Rally Championship, I think. And we did pretty good on you did extraordinarily well on a budget you didn't really have, I didn't think. But you did well, and we had tyres, and we had fuel, and we had spare parts, and all sorts of things happened. So all the best to all those in connection with Graham, and may you have many happy returns. Ciao now, Lloyd Minifie signing off from Huntley, Bendigo. Bye.